Okay.
All right, so we're a little bit late starting the show up, but now this is the premiere episode of Secret Squirrels, and we're filling in for Dr. Corsi while he's on vacation, trying to do whatever we can to give you some information about what's going on in the world. And we're the people that really are behind the scenes doing the Corsi Nation stuff, but we are going to do our best today to share with you some information, and I'm going to try to introduce everybody, or I guess everybody's going to introduce themselves. So we're just going to go around and we'll start with Abigail.
Hello, and welcome to the Squirrel Report.
And what do you do for Corsi Nation, Abigail?
I craft videos and hang out and talk and learn, mostly.
Okay, so April, would you like?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me in today, Brainstorm. I appreciate it. I don't do much for Corsi Nation yet. It might be nice to get involved, but thank you for letting me join you today. I'm honored.
Well, it's nice to have you around here. I'm going to introduce you in terms of just my pet name for you, this librarian. She's our walking encyclopedia.
I'll take that.
Okay, Errol?
Hello. I'm kind of an IT guy, jack of all trades. So pitching in where I can. I love being a part of this group. And this is really fun. Always starting from the ground is always an interesting experience. I've been in a couple of different IT startups that way, and this is unique because it's citizen journalism. It's something near and dear to my heart.
Okay, that's me. I'm Brainstorm. I'm not sure what I am. I'm Doc's whatever he is. I don't know. I pester Doc when he's doing stuff on air. So,
and he really does.
And next we got Craig.
I'm Dr. CD Camp online. That's my handle, and I've been involved with the Corsi Nation now for about 6-7 weeks. Started out just joining in the live chat, and then moved on from that to become a moderator. And I was invited then to become part of the core team. Have been done a lot of kind of the human resources end of the show since I have 30 years of background in doing that. And so I've been helping to screen volunteers and kind of link people to their appropriate job tasks, and had a blast doing it, and glad to help this whole initiative move forward.
Cool. Okay, gold standard.
Happy birthday, Secret Squirrels show. This is our birthday show.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and don't let them fool you, because everyone here wears multiple hats. They may specialize in an area, but it's all hands on deck when a project's unfolding and we need help. So my area is the learning and education, and I'm looking for content writers, so get in contact with us, and let's help fill that section of the website out.
Okay.
And greetings from Florida, I might add.
And now we have Jax.
Hi, I'm Jax. Just greetings from the mountains of Utah. I don't do anything, I just harass people.
Oh, not true.
She is. Yeah, there would be no website without Jax. Just saying, the Corsi Nation is because of Jax. At least the website part of it. She's always there for everybody and doing all sorts of things behind the scenes. So
she's a jack of all trades, really.
Yeah. So JR, you wanting to talk to us, or are you going to keep that mute on? Oh, yeah. I guess you did take the mute off. Okay. JR.
I did.
Okay.
I got a house full of people, so I don't want to disturb the show. I'm JR. I'm from the Peach State, Georgia, and I actually started watching Dr. Corsi on his YouTube program, and he said, email me if you want to volunteer, and here I am.
Yeah. And then, so today's, the show today, and like I said, this is the premiere episode, so we really don't have everything organized too well. But we're going to try to go through some headline news and we're going to hopefully make fun of mainstream media in the process. We are the Mystery Science Theater of mainstream media. So, today we have, I'm using this spider thing, this spider website. It's spidr.today. And I guess it's an artificial intelligence is out there scanning the headlines, trying to figure out what people are talking about. That's what this website is. And it ranks things according to how many major news sources are talking about different subjects, and it thematizes them so that you can see the basic stories. And and it's the most recent first, but like the first story here, we have Manafort judge says he's gotten threats, worries for jurors' peace and safety. And we got 34 sources, addition, like I said, plus the 4. So there's all these sources here that are talking about the Manafort stuff, and that's, I think, one of Doc's favorite subjects. So we'll definitely have to get into that one. The next big story being Detroit celebrating Aretha Franklin. And the Aretha Franklin death is going to be obviously a big story for us all to discuss. We talked about it a little bit earlier amongst ourselves, and that was a great conversation. I'm hoping we can replicate a little bit of that here. And then the third story that we're going to discuss is discussing Brennan and all whatever the mainstream media is talking about that. And we're going to try to go through here and not only try to understand what the mainstream media is saying, but also understand what the truth is behind it. So, there you go.
Hey, John Adams jumped on.
Yay! He's got broadcast experience, so maybe he'll help us amateurs out.
He needs to introduce himself. Everybody else did.
Well, hi, everybody. My name's, screen name is John Adams, and I have a background in study of the world's major religions, mystical paths for, probably 35 years or so, a little bit of broadcasting experience. And so I am actually the Prayer Warrior Team Champion. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. And please send us your prayers and help us to get up spiritually, as Corsi Nation is dedicated to the Founding Fathers' principle of freedom of religion in America. So we are looking forward to having everybody participate. So all religions are welcome, and this is exciting. So thank you.
On that note, I'm gonna, John Adams here has a very peculiar ability to come up with really elaborate, spontaneous prayers, and I'm gonna ask John Adams to maybe give us a little spontaneous prayer for the success of the Secret Squirrels.
Okay, I'll be put on the spot. Let's do it. All right, let's do it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do something that actually comes from the Judeo-Christian background in the Bible, which talks about Matthew 18:18, where two agree as touching anything on earth, it shall be given to them of my Father which is in heaven. And what we'll be doing is invoking the name of God, which was given to Moses at the burning bush, which was Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey, or as it's translated, I am that I am. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll put that call out there, where we then agree for some kind of an action or an event to occur that we're asking for the outcome of God to happen. And of course, we adjust it to God's will. And then we'll do that for everybody that's out there. And hopefully we can get this ball rolling. So with that said, in the name of the I am that I am, which spoke to Moses at the burning bush, in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we agree together for a complete God victory to come forth now, for Corsi Nation to come forth now, for this actual broadcast to get the word out there so that we know what's going on with the news, to help and assist and to bring everybody to this new community, to help and assist everybody to be a participant, to bring forth now God into America. We agree together now for patriotism to take reign, for everybody to understand that each one has their own pattern, their own divine plan that needs to be fulfilled, so that they step up and do the work that's necessary for a complete God victory to come back, to turn this situation around and realize that we're all part of the solution and not part of the problem. Let's then come forth now in community, in the love of community, and for a complete God victory for the Secret Squirrels broadcast and all other things that need to come forth for Corsi Nation. And we thank you and accept it done in full power, and all other projects that are out there that would help and assist God to bring more of heaven to earth. And we thank you and accept it done in full power according to God's holy will. Nevertheless, not our will.
Amen.
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 Yeah,
Amen.
So what do we say here? Look at this elaborate prayer, just spontaneous, off the cuff. It's a really amazing quality. You know, it's like yeah. So
He's got the gift of gab. What can we say?
Yeah, it could be annoying, you know, what can I tell you?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and say a little bit about the title, this Secret Squirrels, and that's like an inside joke with people who really follow Doc. I mean, anytime that he talks about spies and their cryptic messaging and stuff like that, he gets angry with them, and you know he ridicules them. And the squirrel reference is to Rocky and Bullwinkle, and so we're the behind the scenes crew that tries to promote the Corsi Nation and make stuff happen, and we really appreciate anybody out there that assists the effort. We really appreciate anybody that's just tuning in to Doc's show or this show. We're going to try to do our best to inform the people of the truth behind the media lies, and so let's just jump into here the Manafort story. We got Sputnik News as the top source. Well, at least the most recent source on the Spider, but of course the left they're going to be saying that Sputnik is fake news just because it's like Russia oriented or something. But anyway, we could go through some of these other stories too. We got Zero Hedge; it's a fairly reliable source. Let's take a peek at this. Let me zoom in a little bit. So the judge I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs here. The judge in Paul Manafort's Virginia trial for bank and tax fraud revealed in open court on Friday that he has received death threats and is now traveling with protection of the U.S. Marshals Service. I have the Marshals' protection, Ellis said. I don't even go to the hotel alone. I won't even reveal the name of the hotel. I had no idea this case excited this emotion in the public, he added. Manafort also refused to release the names of the jurors at the request of coalition of news organizations, citing safety reasons. The Washington Post, we know that they're reliable, along with New York Times, AP, CNN, NBC, Politico, and BuzzFeed all requested the names of jurors deliberating in the Manafort case. Boy, that paragraph right there. Look at those sources, these media sources: Washington Post, New York Times, AP, CNN. It's like the main players of the misinformation that we're facing. So we got Paula Reed tweet: breaking, Manafort trial judge won't release the names of jurors citing safety reasons. They don't normally release names of jurors, do they?
No, they never have.
So why is this
So
a special
why
thing?
start now? Yeah, well, because they want to. Just in, no verdict in the Manafort trial on the Gateway Pundit.
Okay, let's get to a different source here.
Here, let me get you.
We got CBS and The Week, ABC. Oh, The Hill. Let's see what The Hill has to say. Jury signals it needs more time for Manafort verdict. Oh, we don't want that video to play.
Well, that's not all bad, that's for sure.
No, I was once told by someone who was a prosecutor that the shorter time they take to deliberate, the more you need to be worried. So this could be a good sign.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
I'm suspicious that this whole thing about the judge needing security and everything might be a setup that they're going to claim some group is out to get him, and of course that's run by the right wingers and something like that. It smells like that to me.
So let's do a little backstory conversation of the Manafort situation, because I know not everybody follows the news the way that we do, so we could probably discuss who Paul Manafort is and the significance of this trial. So anybody want to start the introductions on who Paul Manafort is?
Well, he used to be the campaign manager for President Trump. but he's a lobbyist and political consultant as well as a lawyer. The trial that he's currently under is interesting because basically it's double jeopardy, because he was tried for this a long time ago.
Yes, by who was the prosecuting attorney at that time?
Yeah,
Rob Rosenstein.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking that up now, but
if I remember right, charges were never actually brought. They decided there wasn't enough evidence to press forward in that previous case, but nevertheless, this is what's happening now. And everybody is given the impression when they're paying attention to what's going on now, they tie Manafort's name to the campaign manager role, even though he held it only a short period of time, and they make people think that what he's being charged with now has something to do with his role in the campaign, and it isn't. It's stuff that happened a long time before, which there was previously not even charged with. So it's a total psyop.
Right. Well, and he was put on trial for his clothing and for his spending habits, and not for any actual crime.
Cruelty
to
ostrich.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to reiterate here that this trial has absolutely nothing to do with the Russia collusion narrative that they're trying to push, but they're trying to imply that it does because of this past bad action or something like that. That because he did something bad in the past, that he's obviously untrustworthy, and therefore that somehow proves that that Russia collusion is true with the Trump campaign, because he was a manager of that campaign for a while.
Yeah.
So, I guess we can get on to the next story. I mean, we've probably already heard quite a bit about Manafort recently. Because
the problematic thing about that, too, Brainstorm, is that that jump from something that Manafort would have done years ago in the Ukraine, that perhaps one of the Podesta brothers did the same, is so absurd and makes a farce the legal system. It's just so frustrating even to try to bring to word what's going on, because it's just like trying to explain absurd reality. You know, this guy's been put in solitary confinement for something one of the Podesta brothers has done, and it seems so unavoidably clear that he's been put in solitary confinement because he's had something to do with Trump. You know, it's almost like a deterrent. See what will happen to you if you get involved with Trump.
It's one of those things.
You too will be put in solitary.
It's that political
I mean,
theater,
I hope I'm not sounding. Yes.
Because
it's a theater. That's what this is. It's theater.
Yeah. And I, so there's all these forces. So we're the behind the scenes of the Corsi Nation, but there's a behind the scenes of everything. There's a behind the scenes of Washington, what's going on there, and the way that the media portrays it. And so now we have to wonder, what are the good guys? What's Trump's plan in this? Why did he allow, or I don't even know how to say it, but so Manafort took this charge, in a way that I don't think he necessarily had to even go down this road, but he basically got kind of forced into this situation. I think he could have made some changes in the initial doings of this, but I anticipate that the good guys have their strategies along with the bad guys. Bad guys, good guys, they both have their strategies, and the whole thing is taking place for the benefit of the public, the voting public, that we're watching this theater, and this whole thing's done for our benefit, that they're trying to control it's basically it's reaching the minds and the hearts and minds, and persuasion, gaining political will to do other things.
Well, I think I think you're right in asking questions about this matter. Um, to ask questions about this matter relative to the November elections, and then relate that to what Arrow just said earlier about, who's making this theater now? Who's posing those threats? Are they coming from the right? Are they coming from the left? And who's saying that? So I like the way you turn this heliotrope toward the sun of the November elections. I think that's a smart lens to look at it through which to look at it.
Yeah, they're still trying to. I mean, if they're going to have if the bad guys have any hope of surviving at all, they have to win midterms, and even then, there's no guarantee that the good guys still won't win in the real stories that are going on in terms of getting rid of the deep state. Whether that's whoever the good guys are, whoever the bad guys are. I mean, those are
and
hard,
what does
hard
Dr.
questions.
Corsi always say? Who wins in the end?
Well,
God.
So yeah, one of the things that the bad guys do, they know at this particular point that most of the attention of America is still focused on the CNNs, the CBSs, the ABCs, that they still control the airwaves. So you basically have, big corporate media that's behind this that has demonstrated emphatically that they are leaning way left on this discussion and that they're bringing this to the fore. And what's happening now is that that the bad guys are being backed into the corner. So the only thing that they can do is to continue to keep feeding everybody Russian collusion, Russian obstruction, obstruction of justice. It's all Trump, anti-Trump, because they're still doing the airwaves. Because once it breaks, and folks, we know, and Dr. Corsi has alluded to this, that once that dam breaks and the truth comes out, then their day is done. It's basically going to start to happen, and they're getting close. And the old phrase that says, having lived been up in the mountains, that sometimes the worst kind of bear is one that's wounded, and so at this particular point, these guys are wounded and they're starting to run. So now they're at their most dangerous, but they still control the airwaves. So that's what they're trying. And the airwaves, I'm including social media, the Alex Jones censoring, all the stuff that's going on. So
here's another article that talks, and now you can start to, now that we've discussed some of this context of Manafort and what the real game is that's going on here, you can see it more clearly when you see that tweet in Chris Murphy when he says, "So I generally choose not to hang on every twist of the Mueller investigation, but if Trump pardons Manafort after maybe having promised a pardon to get him not to cooperate and gets away with it, then we're in a banana republic. We just are." So they're trying to paint this as so Manafort, I mean, he's completely innocent of Russian collusion. He may or may not have been guilty of crimes previous to that, but the Trump administration was not given any heads up about that before he had him play that role. So, and even the stuff that he's being charged with right now has nothing to do with the Russian collusion, but they're trying to make it be guilty by implication. There's
appearance
no actual, and so
the appearance of impropriety. That's what they're pushing on.
So, I mean, they're trying to make it so that Trump is the one who's doing all this top-down controls and stuff like that, when they're the ones that are actually guilty of it. They're accusing the good guys of what they're guilty of.
And they're hoping that they've packed the Department of Justice and the high-level courts with enough of their people that they can bring down the verdict that suits their side, but they don't have it 100%. So we're hoping, and it's looking like this judge may be on the right side on this one, actually be able to give a fair verdict. We'll see.
So, the key to this is this, going back to putting it in a spiritual context, the key to this is the way that the forces of darkness don't want people to succeed that stand for God or conservative values. Because what happens is that this particular point, it's a divide and conquer. So if they can continue to control the narrative, if they can continue to control, the news cycle and the news story, and the truth is not getting out, it's this appearance over and over again and repeated over and over again, people start to believe it. They start to believe that that's actually what's happening.
Yeah,
and that's what they're counting on.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the mind control procedure, it's through repetition for sure. But because the repetition is what kind of beats down your own common sense, and so they control the information flow. So this is how mind control works. You only hear from the story that they're trying to push, and they have to eliminate all counter narratives. So anybody that would challenge that dominant paradigm, that mainstream narrative, so like the alt media, anybody, I suppose, we could talk about it in terms of conservatism, but it's even more than that. This isn't actually a left versus right thing, because there's plenty of people on the right, in terms of people in office, that are dirty. It just so happens that all the things that they're trying to implement end up being in the Democratic platform. But a lot of ordinary citizens that happen to vote Democrat because they've been gullible enough to listen to the mainstream media, well, they're being kind of led around by the nose by this false narrative. And we want to have a little compassion for the average citizens who have been deceived by this. And we all have been deceived in the past. The whole idea of being red-pilled is that we have to wake up to the reality. The media has been dominating us for a long time, generations probably, at least since JFK. So,
can I interject?
By all means.
Something. I was just thinking of this. I have this slightly evil wish that every time the defense attorneys mention the Ukraine, they have to use the word Korea, the way Maxine Waters called it in one of her interviews. She couldn't think of the Ukraine, so she said, "What is that place? Is that Korea?" And, and she's talking about Crimea or the Ukraine or Korea. So I wish the defense attorneys had to use Korea, and it's just a...
Well, it gets hard to remember what the truth is when you're lying all the time. So
yeah. Or I don't know if she knew that. I didn't know if she knows her geography to begin with, but
yeah, you made me think, Brainstorm, of a famous experiment in which the subject of the experiment isn't in on the collusion. It's actually an experiment where people agree about a lie that they're going to promote, and they make the other person basically agree with them, even though his eyes are telling him, like looking at the length of 3 different lines, and he's supposed to pick the longest one, and everybody else says no. It's
yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's that what they had all those social. It's what do they call it? Social psychology. So it's not really sociology. It's not really psychology. It's like that in between stage, where you're in a small group of people, and if everybody starts going in a certain direction, then you're going to tend to distrust your own judgment, and you're going to go with the group consensus because we have a desire to fit in. So,
and this is being done on a mass scale like never before. Yeah, it's been done in banana republics, but this has never been attempted in a Western country before to this scale, I don't believe. It's been done in Europe, kind of hypnotize the people, but a lot of Americans are seeing through it, but a lot of them aren't. It's like, we're so divided, and this is exactly why. There's an experiment that's being done on us, and some of us, say, pull back the curtain and we can see what's going on. Some of us, unfortunately, don't.
I think it's hard for
those the Ash experiments or Milgrams or
that's right, Stanley Milgram.
Yeah, Millikan or something like that. Yeah.
The Emperor's New Clothes also. Historically, it's a principle that people have been aware of for a long time.
And I think there's a little bit of fear involved, because if everybody suddenly woke up, let's say tomorrow morning, and realized how in depth, this goes, and how expansive this whole narrative is, and the whole thing that's going on, I don't think they would. A lot of people can't believe it. They're not going to be able to do that. How could all the media outlets be like this? How could the economy be like this? How could all these people running for office be like this? Mm-hmm. It's big. It's a big deal, and I think a lot of people are having a hard time facing it.
Yeah.
On Adams, it makes me appreciate Amazing Grace all the more. I once was blind, but now I see. I sing that song with so much more understanding now.
Gives me the chills up the spine.
And you know what? Even the movie did you see the movie of the, I guess, where that came from, Amazing Grace? It was
Amistad? No.
Where the creation of Amazing Grace came from, and it had to do with slavery in Africa. Right. I mean, that's what we're up against right now. At that time, it was an accepted principle. It was an accepted fact. I mean, there were slaves. That was the way it was. And here one guy stood up, made that noise, and was able to literally convert a lot of people to seeing what was really happening.
And this is just the enslavement through mind control. That it's enslavement at just a different level. Exactly.
Yes.
What would you guys say? What's your best argument to those people who are listening now who are saying, no, I think you guys are making this conspiracy thing too big. I think you're being paranoid. What would be your best argument to come at them?
I typically do it like this. I like thought experiments. That's kind of my favorite thing. It's just the idea here is that we've been led to believe that conspiracy theories are crazy. But what is a conspiracy? I mean, the word conspire literally means to breathe together. And so why is it so crazy to think that there are bad guys in the world that conspire behind the scenes to get more wealth and power? Why is that such a radically crazy thing? Why are we programmed? I mean, just looking at your own subjective reaction to the concept of conspiracy theory just in general, why do we have the reaction that any conspiracy theory is crazy? That in itself proves that we have been controlled and manipulated to think the opposite of the truth, because it is very likely that the bad guys are conspiring behind the scenes to gain more wealth and power and to subjugate the masses to their benefit. I mean, you have to be really gullible to not believe in conspiracy theories, frankly.
Yeah, just follow the money.
That's real history. If you actually read history with that thought in mind, cover it over and over again.
Well, there are conspiracy theories, and there are conspiracy facts. And we're talking about a conspiracy fact.
Well, they're facts once we get evidence to... I mean, that's the scientific method. We do have to speculate, because that's the formulation of the hypothesis. Given a certain amount of immediate experience, then we formulate a hypothesis to try to make sense of what experience we have. And then we go out and test that theory, and, well, we test the hypothesis in order to validate that idea. And so even within science, I mean, most people don't know much about how knowledge is acquired. We don't know about deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, all that stuff. But deductive reasoning is like math, right? So math is that you start with certain principles and you can deduce other principles, and you can... But like empiricism is actually about going out and you gather new pieces of information and you create arguments that support a given hypothesis. There is never enough evidence to prove universally some kind of principle. So there's a limitation to inductive reasoning, and there's a limitation to empiricism as such, because you cannot go out and test all available data, because we don't have the facility to know everything in the world that's going on in order to understand that capital T truth, at least from that kind of methodology. So there's a limit to science. And the idea of conspiracy theories, though, is that it's still only a theory, even if you do have evidence, because there might be countervailing evidence that you could introduce later. I mean, so with empiricism, it's inductive reasoning. It's about gathering evidence that supports a given point of view or a given conclusion. And that's where the idea, like when you're in court, beyond a reasonable doubt, we want to say that this is true. Because there's always reasons, there's always the possibility of introducing doubt to anything. You could, the Descartes' dream argument, what if this is all a dream? You don't know that this reality exists. This could all be just a fantasy. You could be a brain in a vat somewhere, and some evil alien is trying to push this experience into your brain. You don't know that any of this is real. I mean, that's the reasonable doubt idea, is that, well, we're going to go ahead and believe that the experience you're having is somewhat real, that we're having an experience of a real world. So, I'm kind of going off on my tangents. Sorry.
I think
to me, everything is a conspiracy theory until I can prove otherwise.
There's an interesting point there, Brainstorm, is about that people have been dumbed down about what the scientific method actually is, to the point where if you just the media tries to say scientists have a consensus that this is true, and they push that line, and people don't know what empiricism is. They don't know what the scientific method is, so they buy what the media says. But they wouldn't be able to swallow that lie that scientists all believe this if they hadn't dumbed down people about what the scientific method actually is, and that, yeah, you can't prove everything 100%, but that doesn't mean that we can't be really, really confident that you found a valid principle here.
There's that other aspect too. It's like, scientists are human, and they're plenty susceptible to coercion and blackmail and all those things. Threats to the family, like anybody else. They could be, bribed, or for whatever reason arrive at that consensus and paint a picture which is contrary to reality. I mean, that part of that scientific method is we have faith that our scientists in question are actually telling the truth of what they believe, rather than contributing to the conspiracy.
Yeah. My part of my background is I was actually in advanced studies in a certain area of science, and I saw that it's all basically driven by the money. So that made me
who gets the research grants,
Yeah. Whoever. Yeah, exactly. Whatever the companies are pushing, that they give a grant to research so and so, and they basically rig the deck. It's like being given a deck of cards, and that are all whatever. They're all face cards or something. That you're going to get a lot of royal flushes. That's the way they do it.
All right, I think it's probably time for us to turn the page. Let's get on to Aretha Franklin. What do you say?
And I like Aretha.
Yes, and I think
it's sad. It's sad that she's gone. I think it's a really sad day in blues and soul that she is gone.
Yeah, we'll give you respect, Brainstorm, because you want to change the subject. Get it?
Okay, so yeah, this, the conversation that we were having earlier when we were trying to rehearse this production for whatever amount of rehearsal we had, but we had this kind
of this is a rehearsal for the next one too, so it's all
we build on it, but the conversation that we had started talking about Black culture quite a bit, about how Aretha Franklin did so much for Black culture, and how the deep state basically interjected their own icons to the Black community and Black culture, and that ended up destroying a lot of the values that Aretha Franklin was trying to promote. And I would say April should probably be the one to talk a little bit about who Aretha Franklin was, from Detroit.
Well, I really don't know if I'm qualified, but I wanted to take a little different spin on what you just said. I think Aretha Franklin is transcendent. I think, she's not just the queen of soul. And I even want to up that ante and say, she's kind of like the voice of America. I think Jack said something like that. But I think there's a universality about her. Now, that's not to say she isn't a Black woman or an African-American woman, but I just wanted to say that. I think Aretha Franklin is one of those topics, God rest her soul, that is, it doesn't warrant any kind of sarcasm or spin, or she does deserve great respect. And I wish we were all in Detroit right now, maybe looking at some of the places she hung out. I'd love to go to her father's church, the new Bethel Church on Linwood. not sure if it's called Linwood anymore. It might have another name, but you know, I think another thing that gives Aretha both, as you say, the black and the universal, is her gospel singing. You know, like her spirit. You know, like if conspire comes from the word
To breathe together.
breathe or spirit. Yeah, Aretha Franklin could breathe, you know, and I'm so glad we have her legacy. How much less the world would be without it. And I'll just say this, if I may, please chime in. I don't want to take over anything, but I think she also, 76 years ago, represents a time that in some ways we're trying to retrieve. Maybe that's what Donald Trump means, you know, make America again. I know so many people problematize like what? Problematize that. But I used to write on the chats, make Detroit great again until I got shadow banned. But she represented a time of great promise and hope.
Black pride. That's real black pride.
Joy.
That's authentic black pride right there.
Yes, yes. And not that there aren't great people in Detroit now. Not that Detroit's not great. Those people who live in Detroit now are tried and true and great. But there was that time before identity politics and before the bad parts of Black Lives Matter, the divisive, Soros-funded aspects of Black Lives Matter took hold, took sway. You know, a time when there was still talk that we could all sit at the table, you know, and
yeah, regardless of race,
yeah, yes, in the time of Martin Luther King. So she came out of a Detroit that represented that. She came out of a neighborhood in Detroit near West Grand Boulevard, where the Motown Museum still is. It's a modest two-story brick house, a kind of flat that on Grand Boulevard, in those days it was considered pretty grand. But it was a private residence, you know, and it represented, she represented a movement along with Marvin Gaye and Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and Stevie Wonder.
You're naming some real big names there. That's
yeah.
Well, the Commodores. Yeah.
That talk about great. Yeah. Let's talk about great. You know, let's talk about great in that regard. In any event, I'm gonna back off here a little bit, but I just wanted to say I'm bending my knees now for the spirit of Aretha Franklin and her people. And all people, that we
family.
Can continue to be inspired by her word. And thank God he created such a beautiful voice for us.
Amen.
Oh, I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss her. You know, I know she hasn't done a whole lot in the recent years, but I'm telling you, she is the queen of soul. She was just a queen. She really was. And I'm going to miss her and her voice.
That idea of the greatness of America in the 60s, I was born in 1956. So those years, that was my childhood. And, I lived about an hour and a half away from Detroit, and my dad actually worked in the auto industry, and there was a pride. I can remember sitting out on our front porch when I was a kid, and we would wait for when Mustangs came out. We would wait for Mustangs to go by, and when a Mustang went by, we would all like jump and cheer, and the auto industry was just such a huge part of that era in America, and Detroit was at the very center of it, and there was greatness there. And I think that is the kind of greatness, as you said, April, that Donald Trump is wanting to revive, that pride in industry and that pride in like, wow, you know, we made these Mustangs, our country made these Mustangs, and
Yeah, and that Motown sound is
and these Eldorados, you
that's
know.
Motor City. That's Detroit. That's what
exactly.
And since in the days since then, to look at what's happened to Detroit. You know, you've got all those Democrat leadership that's been in Detroit running things, and they've just completely wrecked it. Yeah, they've wrecked that city.
They've destroyed it. They've destroyed an icon,
and
an American icon.
If you want to understand the bad guys' plan for America, just look at Detroit. That is what they want for all of us.
Right.
Well, sorry, April.
No, please.
In the 70s, when all of a sudden there was an oil shortage, and I'm pretty sure that was contrived. We couldn't, Americans never wanted to make smaller cars because nobody ever believed that Americans would buy smaller cars. And then all of a sudden, the oil tightened up, and then people started to buy Toyotas and Hondas. And that really was, in my mind, that was really the time of the shift when those industries began to really fail, and it just was kind of on a downward skid from then. And of course, now we make some of the foreign autos in this country, but in my mind, like what I remember as a child and a young woman, there was a very, very significant change in those years.
So
yes, it was very dramatic. What do you guys make of the coincidence that, let's say these Motown people who lived in Detroit, I mean, you could go to Northland Mall in Detroit and see Smokey Robinson floating around, with his beautiful attire. Those folks went to Southern California, and Detroit kept going down, 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 down. As a coincidence, not lost on me. They left, and the 12th Street riots, or as some people still call them, the 12th Street Rebellion, happened. What do you make about that? What happened? What was going on?
Well, you kind of cut out on me a little bit there. But yeah, as much as I heard of your question, I think, what I had in mind was with, in terms of, before I go answer that question, I need to say that, when Trump is talking about making America great again, I think that era, and, like seeing this picture of Aretha staring at me like this, it's like, that's what MAGA means. That's like, that picture really, to me, that really touches what MAGA is about, so.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving on. I mean, the Detroit riots, like you mentioned earlier, I didn't know a whole lot about it before our conversation earlier, and I was immediately reminded of the L.A. riots by that discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And,
the Watts riots,
yeah.
Yes.
So there's a connection there, and I would not be surprised that CIA or whoever the black hats are, they're out there instigating these. Yeah, they stir up these race issues, and they stir up all these problems and get everybody all fired up, hating each other, just so they have an excuse to come in and save the day. And then we, because we're so scared of each other at this point, we accept their rule. We accept the control that they assert on top.
Taking away our rights.
Yeah, it's just like 9/11 thing. It's just an excuse to put the Patriot Act in place.
Right.
Yeah.
Brainstorm. There's a really good book written by a journalist, John Hershey, called "The Algiers Motel Incident." And that book documents, according to Hershey, one of the catalysts of what happened in 1967 in Detroit on 12th Street and Woodward Avenue. Maybe our listeners might like to check it out too.
Well, we don't have a lot of listeners at the moment, but hopefully people will come back once we're, big and famous and, stuff. Maybe they'll look at our archives and see how this whole thing started. But this is it. It's like, one day, maybe it all comes back to Aretha Franklin, and, we're fighting this thing. I mean, the Manafort trial started our conversation out today, and now we're on Aretha Franklin. So there's the deep state problem that really starts us contextualizing the problem, and Aretha Franklin really represents like what is really fundamentally what it is we're fighting for, you know. And I don't know. It seems auspicious to me this day. It seems.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would like to fight for the joy and the spirit that Aretha Franklin, God rest her soul,
Oh yeah,
symbolizes.
I'll
fight for that.
And the beauty she brought to our lives.
I mean, just look at that picture. I mean, that is just wow.
There was a lot of turmoil at that time, in those times, and not unlike today in some respects. A lot of people compare JFK to President Trump, but we went, people like to blame problems on the baby boomers. Man, we grew up with trauma. We went from the Cuban Missile Crisis to having the president shot, and then followed in the following years by Robert Kennedy being shot and Martin Luther King Jr. being shot.
Vietnam War.
tremendous turmoil, and a lot of fear as children. I mean, I was a fearful child anyway, but I just remember childhood was a big aspect of my childhood was fear. And because there was so much turmoil around us, and I think it's somewhat like that now. And we're talking about this struggle to make America great again. And I think it all really kind of coalesces.
Abigail, that's great. Because Aretha Franklin appeals to baby boomers and millennials. She's a unifier, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't get.
So, I don't know. Let's just move on to the next story. I don't know what else we can say about this.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, there was one point that I wanted to point out, and it was Abigail had mentioned this, is that metaphysically there is a point in time when things occur upon which other things are built. And I believe that when she's talking about the fact that there was a lot of disharmony and there was a lot of discord and things like that were occurring during those years, the Kennedy assassination was a focal point in time. Yeah. And that focal point was right then when the deep state realized that they could then take over a presidency. And so when Kennedy was taken out, everything was built on top of that. It went through. So if you start looking at the history about this and you start chasing back some of the players that are involved right now, it all kind of coalesces around the fact that the Kennedy assassination was the focal point of that energy starting.
Probably with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes. Yeah. And everything that was associated with it. The CIA was involved in that. Zapata Oil was involved in that. The Bush family was involved in that.
The gangsters.
The gangsters. Right, exactly. The banking systems, the capitalists that started to fund the communist parts of it were involved in that. The communists were involved in that. And you start to see that coalescing right from those events. And that was when the president was taken out, because they realized that they could overthrow a standing president. And that's what they're attempting to do now. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're revisiting in circumstances exactly what happened during the Kennedy administration.
We are.
And Aretha's time. Uh-huh.
Yep.
And the Federal Reserve. I mean, there's Kennedy was in that struggle to have, wasn't it silver-backed money or something like that? He was in a struggle to kind of put the Federal Reserve on a chain, and I think President Trump is in that same struggle now.
You know what? It just occurred to me that this discussion we're on right at the moment is a perfect lead-in to our next story, because we're talking about Brennan. The security officials stand with Brennan. You see that headline?
There you go.
Former security officials. So it's just like, wow.
Well, and
so you have the same players that were involved at that same time coming back up again, and they're saying, no, everything that you're hearing about is fake. Well, how many years have they been laying this plan out? How long has it been going on? I mean, the Kennedy assassination was what, 69?
Oh, 60. I'm
sorry, 63.
Oh, no. Yeah, 63.
Right, 63. So everything from 63 onward has been built up to that, including the Vietnam War, including black operations feeding the CIA through drugs, and various other things that are out there now. So we're seeing all these events coming to the fore. And where did this guy Brennan get involved? Pretty close to the beginning.
Right.
So in this story that I'm looking at right now, this is Sputnik News, and of course the left is going to disregard this, but this Chris Paranto tweet there. My principles are greater than clearances too, John, especially when you and the CIA Kool-Aid drinkers punish us for not going along with the Benghazi cover-up story in order to protect you, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's failures. You put your politics before us. Benghazi, man. That's the story. That's the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the military participation in all of this. The military is very hierarchical. They will defer to authority, to the elected president. I mean, that's part of the training of basic. When you go to basic training, it's about.
And these guys are blatantly flaunting that.
Right. So, but then the Benghazi situation happened. And to give us a backstory on Benghazi, so you got Gaddafi in there. You know, you've probably seen that clip from Hillary Clinton. You know, it's like we came, we saw, we killed him. You know, what exactly did Gaddafi do that the deep state didn't like? Well, he was collecting a bunch of guns and gold in order to liberate Africa from the central bankers. He wanted to establish a new economy that didn't rely on their debt system, and they could not have that. They could not have an independent Africa. And so to punish him and to stop that from happening, they killed Gaddafi. Then what happened to all that gold and the guns? That was dispersed through Benghazi embassy, and they give it to ISIS. And this is the story who Brennan is, and how Obama was mixed up in this, and why the military got so mad that they had kind of like a switch in your head goes off. I am not following this guy. This guy is evil. Plain evil. I'm not going to follow authority no longer. It's just not going to happen. So that's when they have all the new plans develop. What can we do to fix the situation? And somewhere down the road, Donald Trump comes, and he's saving us.
He put the wet blanket on their party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is what we needed, because we were on a road to a disaster.
And we know that the military was heavily involved in asking Donald Trump to run for office. We know that.
So,
Dr. Corsi's talked about that in some of his other interviews and things.
Yeah.
So, yep. So I agree with you, Brainstorm. You know, the fact that once the military gets involved in that, and the hearts of gold and the patriot movement of the military, you know, is bringing this back, and we have a lot that we owe to our soldiers and everybody who's served.
Yeah, Benghazi was the moment, though, when the military turned against the CIA, and that's why we have the situation we're in right now. And then
enough is enough.
Yep, that's it. No more. Because you had that General Ham was actually going to go try to rescue the ambassador over there, and he was given stand-down orders by Obama. And that moment is just like, that conversation changed history right there.
And I apologize, but what was the name of that movie? It's escaping me right now.
13 Hours.
13 Hours.
Yeah.
I would recommend everybody see that movie.
And what about Brennan in terms of sanitizing Obama's passport records? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder.
That's disturbing. You know, listen, everything about Obama and what the deep state did to get him in is disturbing to me. You know, what is this guy hiding, and why is the CIA doing this for him, or the deep state? You know, it worries me.
Or the question about how did Brennan get vetted to be head of the CIA? Was it, you know, Obama owed him for such a favor?
Well, how did Comey get in too? You know?
A lot of this stuff has been going on for a long time, and I think I've heard that Fox is explaining that all this deep state stuff is just Obama holdovers, but really this has been a gradual infiltration that has been going on for decades, and these people are they're not ideologically oriented. They're power oriented. They're power hungry people, sociopaths or whatever, in these positions of military or FBI or State Department. And then Obama was supposed to be the closer. He was supposed to be the president that would give up America to begin the one world order. And unfortunately, too many people woke up for that to be a slam dunk.
Thank God.
Oh, amen to that.
Mike Sirigo says, since LBJ.
That this has been going on.
Did we lose her?
I think so. I think we lost her.
I'm just reading the chat.
Well, you know, in terms of what Abigail said earlier about baby boomers being through a lot, I'd have to say baby boomers have been through a lot. You know, post-traumatic stress disorder may be why they may be suffering from that, you know. And I've often thought, going back just for a moment, brainstorm back to Detroit, I think anybody who had to live through the demise of Detroit and live in the city with that probably beheld something they still haven't been able to put words to. You know, going from being one of the major cities in the country or the world to a decline in such a hurry is, I remember some people going to inner city Detroit from Central Europe, and they said, what war was here? What happened?
Well, we were so proud of cars, too. I know that probably sounds kind of silly to some younger people, but Americans were passionately proud of automobiles, and everybody wanted to contribute to the well-being of the country. I remember my parents were not wealthy people at all. My dad was blue collar and my mom didn't work, but they bought a new car every 5 years to support American industry. That was what people did then. And the car was an icon, just incredible icon.
I suppose that's, in terms of the historical changes of when the world started to go to hell in a handbasket, as they say. It's that's probably that kind of moment. But just think about all those people that have grown up since then. Even the millennials coming up, they grew up in a world completely full of lies. By this time, the educational institutions are completely saturated with the communist, basically, worldviews, and identity politics and all this stuff is built into their whole life has been this. It's not just some moment that they were traumatized. Their entire life is built of lies.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I was just referring to we did have pride, and considering millennials, like we were proud of cars, we were proud of Detroit, what do they have to be proud of?
Technology.
But the millennials never had the truth to lose. That's what I'm saying. Is like you felt the trauma of losing the truth and into all this lies coming our way, but that's all they've ever known is lies. So, but anyway, we all have to face our own. We have our own
demons.
We have our own crosses to bear. That's the way I want to put it. We all have to try to do our best to, recover from our childhood or whatever the thing that has formed us and made us into who we are. But that doesn't mean we should seek pity either, because these traumas, that whole Nietzschean thing about whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. It may take you a long time to get stronger because you got to recover from that. You have all those scars that you have to recover from. But we definitely don't want a pity party. We don't want to be poor me, because that's what the bad guys do. They want to put us into that victimization sort of frame of mind that we're always victims and we're completely powerless to face, the world or whatever. And we have to really focus as a community, Corsi Nation. We have to focus on empowering people. And that's about reestablishing a locus of control in your life. That's about being able to recognize the things that actually are in your control. We have the ability to make changes in our lives. We have the ability to network with each other and find other people with like-minded or, similar goals or objectives. These are the kinds of things that are going to save us. And we got to focus
Well,
on the
that's
things,
what
you know.
that's why we've got Corsi Nation, is so that we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and that's
So
part
I
of the
think
larger
part-
movement, though.
like-minded people. Yeah.
I think part of the problem is in today's society, so much of the population is escaping. They're escaping
Exactly.
into entertainment, all forms of entertainment,
Yeah.
television, the media, and then even just watching your television programs. The propaganda and the liberal agenda inherent in every show that I watched. I went through a time where I didn't watch TV at all, years. I didn't watch anything. And then all of a sudden I watched, and I was shocked at what I was
how
looking
bad it
at.
was, how
Yes,
bad
and
it was. Yeah.
yeah, and the millennials watch these shocking programs, and with the curse words and the sexual innuendo and loose morals and the liberalism and all of that, and it's
okay
nothing
for them.
unusual
Yeah,
for them.
yeah, exactly.
And that's part of the brainwashing, the propaganda and the doctrination of our people. And so we've fallen asleep. How many people don't even bother to vote? I mean, if you look at the percentage, yeah.
Well, see, on that note, it kind of brings us back full circle to what we originally started with this earlier on with the Manafort and the way that the mainstream media is lying to us, and it is a mass scale brainwashing operation. It is a psychological operation. It's psychological warfare, and that's what we are trying to do here in this show. We're going to try to help Dr. Corsi's efforts. We're going to try to do our best to fill in for his work, at least in temporary form. And I want to remind everybody to wish Dr. Corsi a happy and sane vacation, and
happy vacation, Dr. Corsi. Yep. We love you.
Enjoy. You deserve it.
Happy sane vacation. I'm not sure why we're wishing you that.
Well, because hopefully he's away from all this drama that it just instigates the insanity dealing with this stuff.
It's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
It's got to be, and I know it is for me. And, I would like to see changes. I worry for my family coming up, but again, like you said, Brainstorm, we've got to weather these battles, and we've got to come out stronger.
Yeah. And I don't think really Abigail meant to talk about a pity party. I don't think. I think people like just to be able to
I totally
articulate what they've been through.
No, I understand
to
that.
be able to say
we're
what
tough
it is.
as nails, aren't we, April?
No, I just didn't want it to go that way. I'm just, I didn't say that's what you're doing. I just didn't want to end up, moving in that direction. So
and you got it around, Brainstorm, to the empowerment thing, into. Hey, can I do I have time to say a little story a nun told me once?
Surely.
John Adams, what do you think about this? I'll make it quick. I'll give the abbreviated version. I guess somebody went to God and said, my life is too much. I want something easier. My cross is too big. And maybe went to God a few times. And finally, God said, okay, take your cross and go into the cross store and pick out another one. So the person went into the cross store and wandered around, saw some really huge, some smaller, some different colors, diverse, let me say, a diverse array of crosses. And so finally that person said, okay, let me exchange mine for this one. I like this one right here. And when they walked out, God said, that's the same one you walked in with. It's the exact same one.
I will add one thing to that.
Please.
After having spent many years studying this and seeing the patterns, in the mystical roots of all the world's religions, it really does boil down to the fact that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Hey, there you go.
And not human beings having spiritual experiences. And that is our empowerment. And you have to remember that even if you do not think you can do anything about this, you can always pray any way that you possibly can. And that's why all faiths are welcome. So remember that.
Praying is our power.
Right.
That's the only way we're going to be able to beat this, is through constant prayer.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know where Dr. Corsi stands, how he feels about his Lord and Savior. You know how most of us stand about our Lord and Savior. And there are many out there that feel the same way, and there are many out there that have devotions, similar to that. Just direct your devotions to God, and make sure that whatever it is that we can do to wake people up, get them to vote, get out there and get us all together on one page so that we can bring back, America to where it needs to be.
Yes, very good, very good. Brainstorm, do we have any viewers?
We only have a couple of viewers.
Great.
That's all our relatives.
Let's remind them. John Adams, can we remind them about our International Day of Repentance and Prayer?
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead,
out on the website, we have for October 13th, we have the International Day of Repentance. And if you go out to Corsi Nation, up at the top, you will see a tab. Click on that, and it will give you an explanation about what the International Day of Repentance is. October 13th was chosen for two reasons. One was the laying of the cornerstone of Washington, in Washington, of the White House, and the second one was the 6th appearance of the Divine Mother, Virgin Mary, at Fatima, where she brought forth the secrets and the miracle the Son occurred. And that prophecy was warning about the creation of communism and the spread of communism throughout the world, which, as we know, is what we are fighting here. So please join us together in prayer. Go out to the website. Everything there that you can find is there. And we'll even have prayers if you don't even have ones of your own.
Yes, please join us on that day. And JR's got a lovely article on the Corsi Nation website about the secrets of Fatima. Do check that out.
So I have a couple words in closing. We're going to try to stay with the Corsi schedule of, an hour plus, plus something. I don't know, But one thing I know in my own life that I guess, I mean, really for me, this is like in a way it's kind of a red pill story as they call it, but I really started tuning into this kind of thing around the Las Vegas shooting time. That's about the time period when I was saying something's up, something's weird going on here. But once I started looking around with this and I started finding this this sort of movement, then I realized one very important thing, that all my life I have felt alone. I have done my own thing. I followed my own drum, or whatever you say, but this movement, the MAGA movement, has become something really powerful, and I think all of us here, and probably most of the people that actually get exposed to this video, are going to probably have one thing in common: is that in order to get here, you've had to go down a journey of your own, and you've had this a little bit of lost and alone sort of feeling in your life, and this is a very different thing now. This is a change in your own life, in your own spiritual journey, that now we don't have to be alone anymore. Now this is us. We can do it together. We don't have to do it by ourselves. And part of personal empowerment is about learning to trust each other, learning to rely on each other and help each other out. It's okay to have friends, and it's okay to be part of a group. It doesn't mean we're going to end up as herd animals. And the different thing, it's very different about a community like this is a community of individuals. Nobody has to think the same way as anybody else. We don't have any sort of dogmas that we're going to push down your throat. Everybody has the right, and we even encourage you to think for yourself, ask your own questions, develop your own thoughts, and learn the skills in citizen journalism to develop your own platforms, whether that be a YouTube channel or the blogging or microblogging or whatever it is that's in the technological situation of our times right now. We have the opportunity to articulate our concerns, our hopes, anything that we learn about the bad guys, of course, but even more importantly, what kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of society do we want to build? And we can start doing that now as a community of individuals, people that can think for themselves but are willing to work together towards a common dream. We can do that. That's what MAGA's about. It's my take on it anyway. But I really appreciate the guys in here that have helped me with this show today. I think it's turning out pretty good, and I'm hoping Doc likes it. But I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brain.
Thank
Oh,
you.
be sure to share. Everybody that's out there, be sure to share.
Yeah,
And
this was
tell
fun.
your
Thank
friends.
you, Brain.
Yeah, Brain, thanks for your coordination and pushes.
Yes, thanks, Brain.
Okay. So we are the Secret Squirrels signing off. Goodbye.
Bye.